So when we're doing chat, I'm using Restream and I can see all the chats, but it is only one way. So I'll respond more through Q&A and stuff as we go through it. But I think we're close enough. It's right at 10 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get going. My name's Denver Noahs, President of Wealth for Life. Thanks for everyone joining us today. Today we're going to talk about the 5 strategies millionaires use to cut taxes by 50%, 5x their wealth. If there's any problems hearing me, let me know if we need more volume or anything like that. So this is part 3. And so we had, I think, over 1,200 people on that kind of registered for parts 1 and 2. So if you have been on those previous events, we are going to cover, I'll do a quick kind of recap. So we'll cover some of the tax strategies and things we covered. And then I'm going to add some new strategies. We're going to go into asset structure. And if you're new and this is your first time, you'll get a good recap on some of the strategies and stuff that we're going to use. So our agenda then is we're going to start with kind of the advanced tax elimination strategies. And then we're going to go into the frameworks and assets and the ability of what are the frameworks and assets you can use to 5x wealth. I did add some additional slides today as we're kind of watching the market sell off because I figure a lot of people are going to have questions and issues around that. And then we'll go through case studies on assets and saving 6 and 7 figures in taxes. So just as you're going through the thing, you can ask those questions in chat, and I will get to those questions. If I don't get to them while we're going through all the slides, I'll get to them at the end. And just make sure that you're kind of liking and commenting along the way to help LinkedIn kind of show the event and everything else. So let's kind of jump into the strategies. I always like to start on one side with the tax side of things, because my name as a fiduciary, we do tax side, we do investment side. It's like managing this whole thing. How do we put this whole thing together? And the tax one is the one that doesn't get enough attention. And so I'm going to give you a kind of a scenario to ponder here. Let's say you're going to retire with $2 million in your 401k. You want to go out and you want to have $120,000 in income for retirement. How much are you actually going to owe in taxes? That's probably a good thing to know, because you're going to get down to retirement and potentially taxes could be one of your biggest liabilities. And so what that number comes out to, and there's software that adds this up, is a little over $1 million in taxes from that $2 million 401k, right? The money's growing, but all of that money's coming out taxes ordinary income. And so if you do nothing but follow the tax code, that's how much money is going to go to taxes over the course of retirement. Good thing to know, right? Maybe this is something you can plan for and figure out what to do about. And if you go out and you start doing strategic planning, and like in this case, I'm giving you an example. If you go and you add a tax-free income stream of $60,000 a year, tax-free, you combine that with the 401k, that generates around $560,000 in tax savings. Just from doing some more strategic planning, $560,000 in tax savings. Now, again, is it easier to go out and chase rate of return, or is it easier to try and save money on taxes? And when you think about what you can do with that tax money, instead of sending it to the IRS, the question I always ask people is, hey, if you're out there and if you kept the money, could you double it 2 times over the course of 25 years that you might spend in retirement? So that $560,000 doubles once over 1.1 million, double it twice, that's 2.2 million. So you can start to see that taxes can make a huge impact in how much money you're able to have for retirement. There's so much pressure to save. People are trying to do all that. Think about, well, gosh, if you could just stop those losses coming out every year from taxes, it can make just an incredible difference. And that's what this particular chart will show. This one shows, the difference between if you take $1 and you double it and you tax it, versus you make it tax-free. So on the left side of this chart right here, you take $2, you double it tax-free, it turns into $1 million over 20 periods. Think of that in terms of years. If you tax it at 25%, that same money grows to $72,000. So $1 million tax-free, $72,000 taxable. And it's just an incredible what the impact is and how much difference it can make. So when we go out there and we're kind of thinking about this planning, this is critically important, because most likely everyone on this call is probably in the top 10%. And currently the top 10% of Americans pays 70% of all federal taxes. So that's a big number, right? And we know we have deficits, we have spending, we have everything we have. Taxes are probably not going to go down. And for those that are in that group that's already paying 70%, taxes, are very, probably not going to stay the same. They're probably going to go up. Even right now, the top 1% pays 42% of all federal taxes. So if you're in that group, which I call kind of the workhorse of the economy, where you're making 150,000 a year to a million a year, you're getting pounded by the full force of the US tax code. Because when people get to these levels where they're a million and above, they have their 10 million and above and beyond, they have aggressive strategies that dramatically reduce taxes. And then when you're in the lower income groups, unfortunately, you don't have the income, so you're not paying the taxes. So there's those people in the middle that just get pounded with 30, 40% tax every year. So part of my message today is, again, using the strategies that we're going to talk about. It's like, stop chasing rate of return. Reducing taxes is easier and safer, but it does take time. And you do combine this with the financial planning side of things, which is exactly what we're going to talk about today. So we are going to go into some case studies where I'll go into, how, some examples of how clients have used these strategies, like a 225,000 in tax savings on income of 900K, 90,000 in tax savings, income on 450K, 550,000 in tax savings in businesses, 800,000 in incomes for, business, an online business. Like, there's a lot that you can do there that just doesn't make it down to mainstream advice, because really most of this does not apply to probably 95% of the population, maybe even 97% of the population as you start getting into those higher incomes. So that's why a lot of people don't hear about these particular strategies. For those of you that don't know, my name is Denver Noes. I'm president of Wealth for Life. I've been an independent advisor for 20 years. I'm also a fiduciary, which means, of course, we're legally bound and obligated to act in the best interest for our clients, not captive to any one particular strategy. But I really learned more about finance in the real world and really caring for my parents. I cared for my mom, my dad, my grandma for about 10 years before they passed. And I learned that when things don't always go the way in life that you plan them out to do. And my mom, my grandma got hit with health issues later on in life and ended up living with me for about 10 years. My dad had a business, pest control business, still in the family today. And I watched the impact of taxes and how it hit him. And those of you that have been on in my webinars and follow my stuff, you've heard me tell the story how my dad's business was starting to grow. This is the early 80s. It got audited. And at that time, the IRS audits were aggressive. They literally came to his home, sat on his couch, and audited him. And of course, back in the day, you didn't have Google of like, how do I plan for taxes for my small business? And it really just decimated his business, because they came in, not even, well, back in the day, it would have been big amounts of money to him. In today's dollars, not that much, but he didn't have the strategies and the planning in place. So he did what a lot of small business owners did back then. It's like, oh, instead of paying the IRS, hates the IRS, I'm going to just fly under the radar, kept his business small, goes to cash payments, and that really impacted the trajectory of his growth. And so if you're trying to take wealth to the next level and get it to those next areas, preserving and protecting wealth from taxes is going to be an integral part of getting to those next levels. So now for today, this is kind of the big call to action for the day. This is all we have here, is just join the Wealth for Life group. So all of the strategies and stuff that I talk about, all of the slides and everything that you're going to see, the video of this PowerPoint will be in the Wealth for Life group on LinkedIn. So you can just go to wealthforlifegroup.com. You join the group, you'll have access to the slides and the PowerPoints. And so if you have to jump off early, you'll be able to access everything that we have in that Wealth for Life group. That Wealth for Life group is really a community where we try and kind of put everything together. All these strategies we can't talk about, on the internet, because a lot of these things are proprietary and you don't want things to get abused and exploited. So that's really a community of high net worth individuals where I share strategies I'm learning from my high net worth clients. And we focus on how can we make everything better. So make sure you're joining that. So now as we kind of continue, let's talk about a little bit more. We're going to dive into the tax elimination side and the tax strategy side of things. So the more you make, the more you're taxed. You're probably already feeling this pain. Taxes are punishing you on the way up, and it's kind of like, paddling upstream, right? Because you start to make more and you think like, man, I'm going to get the big bonus this year. And you get we're going to go buy the thing, you and the family, because you're going to have this extra money coming in. And then you get it. And the CPA goes, oh, you owe an extra 40,000 or 50,000 in taxes. And that, cycle continues. So as you start making more money, you're trying to save more to maintain your lifestyle, but taxes are punishing you, making it harder and harder to save. Is there anyone out there kind of experiencing that? Just let me know in the chat. But that's a common thing that happens as you start, getting more income. And I think that that really is the difference between this chart, which is showing, the big graphs right there in the middle is the top 1%, the wealth of the top 1%, roughly 11 million. You look at the next one to the left of that, that is the top 10%. So you got to get to top 10%, you need about 1.2 million. To get to 1%, you need 11 million. It gets very hard to go from the top 10% to the top 1% for one of the main reasons I think is taxes. Taxes are punishing you and you're trying to get ahead, but you're getting pounded all the way up. Then once you break into that top 1%, there's so many other strategies that open up to reduce taxes. That's what helps wealth to accelerate. But taxes, again, are the key from taking wealth to 3 million to 5 million, 5 million to 10 million and beyond. So we're going to break it. We're going to go into some of the tax elimination strategies. I'm going to review some of those, add some new ones here that we didn't talk about in the last two events. And again, if you have questions or comments and you can hear me okay, make sure everyone, you let me know in the chat, and we're going to kind of keep rolling through the strategies. So when we look at tax elimination, let me get back to my screen here. I want to kind of make an important note that 401ks, IRAs, SEPs, defined benefit plans, these plans do not eliminate taxes. You pay the taxes when you take the money out. So just as a clarification, because there's so many people that are very surprised when they get down to retirement or in the planning stage and they go, wait a second, my 401k is taxable? Yes, it's taxed. Everything that comes out, the contribution, all the money you put in, all of the gains that you've made is going to come out taxed as ordinary income. Income meaning it's taxed just like you're working. So if you're in a high tax bracket now and you retire in a high tax bracket, you still got to pay more taxes. So you pay the taxes taking out. And I just say that because a lot of times people think that that's a tax savings plan. It's not. It's a tax deferred plan. You defer the taxes, you pay them later. You don't know if it's a savings plan until you get to retirement and you know what tax rate you're going to be at. But with good strategy and good planning, like I'm going to go over today, we're going to talk about how to maximize that so you can actually use these programs in the way that they were designed. So the first strategy that I'm going to talk about is multi-generation endowments. That is one of the best strategies on the market to reduce taxable income by up to 50%. So that's W-2 income, business owners, selling appreciated assets, you have an exit event. One of the best strategies are out there. This was introduced to me by a client of mine who's been using it for a few years. And after doing massive due diligence and meeting with teams of counsel and attorneys and different client group CPAs, part of what we do in the Wealth for Life group is I have groups of clients that have net worths in 10 million and plus. And when we find a new strategy, we get everyone's teams on board to analyze it, try and break it down, try and poke holes in it. This is one of those strategies that has actually been around since 1999. Black letter rulings, established law, but it can reduce taxes by up to 50%. So that means if you have, $1 million income, you can cut it by, 500,000, you can save taxes on 500K. So it's one of the best strategies out there to really move the needle in the way that it does it. And it works great for income spikes, for business sales or exits, real estate sales. And it does it in a very safe manner. There's a charitable component with it, but the key to it, one of my favorite things about this particular strategy is that you are never having the money leave your possession. So if you look at a lot of the other, I should say, crazy tax strategies out there, or things that have gotten abused, such as captive insurance companies or conservation easements. Many of these, you're looking at offshore structures, you're looking at having to send the money away, and you're losing control, and then you're being aggressive with it. This strategy is none of those. The money actually never leaves your possession, never leaves your control. You still are able to use the capital for the rest of your life in any way that you need to. And then eventually 40, 60, 80 years down the road, there's a charitable component that's going to go to charity. That's what facilitates the tax deduction now. So it's very conservative. It follows the black letter rulings and law, meaning when people first hear it, the instinct is to think, it's very aggressive. It's actually not. It's actually very conservative, very diligent. It's been around since 1999. So if you have income or you're looking for exits in those areas, the multi-generation endowments can work great. Another strategy I'm going to highlight, again, these are going a little quicker on some of these strategies because we covered these in the last two, but loan-based split dollar compensation, that's where you take compensation out as a loan, not taxed as income. And you can use this if you set it up properly to create tax-free income in the future. So that the example would be you have a $500,000 salary, you take $100,000 of that salary as a loan. Now you're not taxed on that 100K. and then it's going to create a tax-free exit. Usually there's going to be a life insurance component that then just covers the liability, the tax down the road, so it pays it after death. And one of the highest profile cases of this was Jim Harbaugh. He became the highest paid coach in college football history a number of years back now, University of Michigan. But he used this loan-based split dollar compensation. The University of Michigan put $2 million in a plan for him every year for 7 years. He's not taxed on that $2 million, right? Now, then when he gets to retirement, he takes out a $1.2 million tax-free income for the rest of his life. And that structure, which is well established, has been around for a long time, typically has been reserved for households of 10 million in net worth, but that is not required anymore. So really, there's strategies you can do like this with household incomes over $200,000 a year. You can really take advantage of that and create some large tax-free income streams. I'll show some more examples of that as we keep going through it. So we've covered two strategies: multi-generation endowments, reduce taxes by up to 50%; loan-based split dollar compensation, it's where you take compensation as loans. The next strategy we're going to go into is private foundations. Another underutilized one. That's where you become the charity, but private foundations really have a great benefit. Not only can you get the tax deductions and have really good tax benefits, so you can put up to 30% or deduct up to 30% of your adjusted gross income into private foundations. A lot of times, again, people think of the Gates Foundation, the Buffett's foundations, all these big numbers, but there's actually ways to do wonderful foundations on a smaller scale. And my neighbor's is a wonderful example of that. She has a heavy equipment business. It's actually on the History Channel, pretty cool business. She takes under 50 grand a year every year out, puts it in her foundation, and she has an animal rescue at her house on her property with horses and everything else. She does horse rescue and animal rescue. But now she's able to fund that for her business through the business. So she was already spending money in that area anyway. Now she can do that with the tax deduction. But what's different than just giving it to charity is now she still maintains control of the money. So she doesn't have to spend the $50,000 once. She gets the tax deduction. She can use it in the mission of her foundation. And then eventually when she wants to retire, maybe she just goes and works to her foundation. Now she can take income off of her foundation. So it's just another tool that you would add in the toolbox of a way to reduce taxes. This fits in with a lot of what I talk about, which is the modern family dynasty, where you're creating, taking the values and beliefs you use to create success and helping to magnify those so those values and successes continue for future generations. This is one strategy. It's a great way to do that in creating the modern family dynasty, which I think is something everyone should actually be working on. Because if you've made it so far into the top 1%, it's not that easy to do that. And you want to be able to help your generations get there. Doesn't mean they get a free lunch or a free ride, but it does mean that you're giving them the support and providing structures to do that. And I know this is a little bit of a tangent, but I would say with that modern family dynasty idea, I can't tell you how many people I talk to that, have millions of dollars and their kids have no idea, or they don't have any plans or structures. And I'm not talking about trusts and wills and things like that. I'm talking about how do you educate your kids so that they can continue the mission of even just taking what you've done to be successful and have that continue. That's what the modern family dynasty is about. So that's part of this process when you're talking about tax and planning, because you can get to those dynasty levels if you're not sending as much money to the IRS, if that makes sense. So now let's go into tax-free income streams. So there's on the tax side, there's always two portions of that equation. One is reducing taxes now. The second is creating tax-free income in the future. And you really need both of these components. Sometimes you can only do one or the other, and sometimes they can do both. But the tax-free income side is really a critical component there, because there's a lot you can do there, and that's what we're going to go into. And I know, again, I would say join the Wealth for Life group, as I know everyone's busy. And if you're just joining and you missed some of this, all the slides that I'm going to talk about today are going to be in the Wealth for Life group. So you just go to the wealthforlifegroup.com. That's the group on LinkedIn. It will take you right there. You can join and have access to these slides and PowerPoints. So let's get into then tax elimination. So the idea behind tax elimination is using tax buckets. Tax buckets is one of the most underutilized concepts in financial planning. I don't know why every financial planner doesn't talk about it. Well, I probably do, because they don't have the strategies. They don't know what to do if they were to talk about it. But when you use tax buckets, you're having The idea is to have money in taxable and tax-free positions. Taxable and tax-free. Most people get down to retirement, they have everything in taxable. So if you're getting down to retirement, all your money's in a 401k or a taxable account, everything is taxable. So then you're going to again get pounded by the full force of the US tax code, and it adds up to a big number. So if instead we can combine these strategies, we can take and drop from a 37% to a 22%, for example, that can help you save 6 figures or more in taxes. And I'm going to give you some examples as we're going along. So this is the strategy that I started out, remember, at the beginning of the webinar, and I showed this example of, this is how much taxes you will pay off retiring with a $2 million in a 401k. This is tax bracket strategy, which we're going to talk about right now, is how you can wipe down a lot of these taxes, and how you take it to, in this case, you build the tax-free income stream of $60,000, $560,000 in tax savings. That is well within reach for many, many people if they have the right structures and plans in place. And then I always go back to, again, chasing rate of return. You go to a financial advisor, they're always talking about, let's chase rate of return. I can get you higher investment returns. If you have a leak of 20, 30% going out of your cash, your money bucket every year, easier to plug the leak. And that's a tax bracket strategy will help you do that. You can take that money, double it. You get the idea. If you can preserve money from taxes, you will have a lot more of it. And that will make life a lot easier, reduce the pressures along the way. So this is what you need to know about tax brackets. And as I'm going along, if I'm coming through good, please type in the chat, make sure you can hear me okay. But as we go into the tax bracket strategy, this right here, understand that every sleeve of money that you make there, I've kind of highlighted those in red, is taxed at different rates. So when you hear someone say, oh, I'm in a 35% tax bracket, that doesn't necessarily mean that all of their money is taxed at 35%. So as you see, some money's taxed at 10, 12, 22, 24, 32, 35, and 37. So how do we use this information to our advantage? Well, this is an example. Again, your idea is to combine taxable and tax-free sources. So if you go out, you're withdrawing, you get down to retirement, you're withdrawing at a 24% bracket, meaning your expenses for retirement are somewhere between $178,000 a year and $340,000. Everything there would be taxed at 24%. So if instead you bring in a $50,000 tax-free income stream that prevents you from going into that bracket, well, what's $50,000 times 24%? It is $12,000 a year in tax savings, right? So 25 years times 12,000 in tax savings is $300,000 in total savings on taxes throughout the course of your retirement. Again, can you keep that money invested? Can you double it more than once? Can you double it twice? So you can start to see how this can really add up to, big numbers, 1.2 million. And you think about how many people even get to $1 million in wealth. Like if you can add tax savings into that, it just makes such a huge difference. Here's kind of a bigger example of that. Let's say you're in a higher tax bracket. You're in a 32% bracket and you build a $100,000 tax-free income stream. Well, 32% times 100 grand, 32,000 a year in tax savings times 25 years in retirement, $800,000 in tax savings by building different buckets. And can you double that money once? Can you double that money twice? So there's a lot that can be done on how it impacts taxes. So now that we understand tax brackets, I'm going to go into a little bit of one of the strategies I didn't cover last time, but we'll cover now. In the last event, we'll cover this one now, is using other people's money for Roth conversions. So we know that Roths are great because they create tax-free income streams. So if you have a Roth and you can build $50,000 in income tax-free coming out of that, you're balancing that with your 401k withdrawals. Now you're able to drop into those lower brackets. But the problem with Roth is that you have to pay the taxes on conversion. So this is a strategy that uses other people's money to pay the taxes. And this, let me get to the right screen here. This is one of those ones right now that is, I'll just kind of walk you through it and then I'll tell you how we got to this place. So in this example, we're looking at a $700,000 IRA. Now you wouldn't want to go out and pay the taxes on that all at once. And in this case, for this particular client, we were able to withdraw $100,000 a year or convert, because that's going to count as income, at the 24% rate. So the taxes are 24%. But they have an asset with 19% matching on all deposits for 7 years. So guaranteed. So the matching pays the taxes. And so that roughly, when you do the conversion, a couple things happen. We're looking at that's probably creating about 350,000 in tax savings over the course of life by converting to Roth, making everything tax free. And the effective tax now that we're able to convert at is 6% because we have this guaranteed 19% matching on deposits. And how are the guarantees so high? This is purely a function of treasury rates and where they're at. But that's what gives us this 6% effective tax rate on conversions. And in that particular asset, what we're looking at here is 19% matching on all deposits for 7 years, guaranteed by an A+ rated insurance company. It's still going to earn bond-like interest, 3 to 6%, but it has no market risk. And at 10 years, you take your money and go and redeploy it and do whatever you're going to do. So it's similar to like a 10-year bond strategy, but where treasury rates right now give us an incredible opportunity because these insurance companies are able to use call options and treasury rates to provide these super high guarantees. And so when you know that, okay, I know we have a guaranteed 19% matching on all deposits for 7 years, if I'm anywhere in these 22, 24, even up to 32% brackets, I can convert my IRAs and 401ks, old 401ks to Roth and be paying effective taxes somewhere in, 6%, 8%, 10%. That by far is the lowest money you're ever going to pay. Because what happens is you're going to get to retirement, you got Social Security, you got other income, and now you're always going to be back in your 22, your 24, or your 32. So this is actually helping you just not only save 350,000 in taxes, but use the tax code the way it was designed. Then you took your IRA, you got the deduction at 24, 28. Now you pay it, you convert it using those matching products, your effective tax rate is 6%. You're actually winning on that game. What the IRS is betting is that you won't do that and you're going to get to retirement and you're going to get taxed at the same rate. And now everything you put in is taxed at ordinary income and all of your gains are taxed as ordinary income. So then you end up losing, the IRS wins more. They know their math. They typically win more on that math. So that's the OPM Roth conversion. That's a great one great way to create kind of the tax-free income streams. And the slides, Sydney, will be in the Wealth for Life group. So wealthforlifegroup.com. You can go there. That's the group on LinkedIn. You just join it. It'll take you right to LinkedIn. And the slides will be in there after we're done today. So the next strategy we're going to go into, and I would say to that I think is one of the best strategies on the market right now. But I am looking for a couple of case studies on that to actually run a tax analysis. We want to do that at no cost. And you want to, if you're okay being a case study, because I want to get some more data on that and some more client studies and case studies, because I think that is something that could actually help a lot of people, but would love to have some more data to kind of show people on that. So if you're interested in being a case study on that, just email me, denver@wealthforlife.net, and that you saw it on the webinar, and we can chat about it and see if it's a fit in that area. So now we're going to go to the next section of tax-free, which is the 3-to-1 tax-free matching program. That is probably, again, probably the way to create one of the largest tax-free or the largest tax-free income streams available on the marketplace. You can create, really unlimited amounts of tax-free income. And the way you think about that strategy is it's really a no-limit Roth. But again, we're using other people's money to match it. So in this example, you go out and you're saving 125,000 a year, over 5 years, the matching is going to be 375,000. If you're saving 250,000 a year, the matching is going to be 750. So again, you're using more of other people's money. All of this is tax-free. So again, think no limit Roth. So in the 250 example, you're saving 50 grand a year for 5 years. You put in 250, that is matched in the tune of 750,000. Now you have this $1 million tax-free asset. And what that does when you start looking at distribution is that it creates, much, much higher income streams. So that's if you're out there saving on your own. On the left side of this slide, 50 grand a year. But if you're using matching, you get 100 grand a year, and it's going to be tax-free. It will typically double the tax-free income versus saving on your own. And this is all done, with a high degree of safety. You're not on the hook for the interest rates. You're not making loan payments. It's a self-collateralized asset. Again, one of these strategies was typically reserved for net worths that were over 10 million. But, really household income over 200 grand gets you there. And again, it's one of the easiest ways out there to create tax-free income streams. Then you combine that with the tax bracket strategy. This is what allows you to create big income streams and drop into lower tax brackets. And Joseph, I appreciate you. Thank you for posting that link to the group in the chat. All right, so from kind of just what we looked at, I want to just highlight one quote. And if you get no takeaways, one takeaway from this whole event, it's this: the average investor chases risk with their own money and they get upset when they lose. The wealthy use large amounts of other people's money in safe assets and win every time. This is a big part of the wealth game. And it's really simply a matter of when you use other people's money in a safe way, large amounts of other people's money in safe assets. That's the key, safe assets. It will beat less money in risky assets every time. So on your own, right? Linear savings, using leverage in a safe way, other people's money multiplies gains. And when you can do that on a tax-free basis, it really has an incredible impact on what it can do for your overall wealth. All right, I'm going to take a quick drink here. We're going to move in, keep going. Olga, I would say join the Wealth for Life group and you'll find a lot of resources there. And of course, if you have questions, you can just contact me directly, DM me on LinkedIn, or you can use my email that I posted earlier as well. So this is really the difference. The things that we're talking about today are the difference when you look at like the chart I showed earlier. Top 1% of wealth, top 2% is 2.4 million, top 1% is 10 million. What's the difference? The difference between those two is probably not hard work. It's strategy, planning, leverage, tax protection, all these other things that you're combining, and the systems. The systems are what make all of this happen. So those are the strategies we're talking about today. We kind of just covered the tax piece of things. And there's probably a lot of strategies that people have heard about or saw today that they've never heard of. And this is why. And to me, this is the state of financial advice. And it's really for the 99% of Americans, it's invest in the stock market. That's the financial advice that's given. You go to the financial planner, you have $50,000 invest. You say, finally, okay, let's invest in the stock market. You have $5 million. They're going to say, invest in the stock market. I'm not anti-stock market. I'm an investment advisor. I sell investments, but I recognize that as one tool in a toolbox of many tools. And after 20 years or more of meeting with high net worth clients, the larger their net worth, the higher their wealth, the lower their allocation in stocks. Most wealth is not made in the market. It's made in other places. It comes into the market from other places being able to make it elsewhere. But there's so much else below the iceberg, right? Whether it's private equity, acquisitions, real estate, tax-free matching strategies, business ownership, tax elimination. That's what the top 1%. They're getting such a more broader view of how wealth can be grown and the different tools that are out there. And so what you should be doing when you're planning and working with a planning team is it's all about what are the outcomes you want, what are the best strategies available, and advisors should not be captive to any one particular strategy. And I know from being an investment advisor and being in the investment industry, they really force us to stay into one asset class by and large. I'm talking the industry as a whole. So that's why there's whole networks devoted to investing in the stock market. And every time you want to talk about retirement, it's all about investing in the stock market. So advisors should not be captive to any one particular strategy, because what happens when you do is this is kind of what you get. There's always going to be, look at the top headline there, a recession is coming. The bottom headline, don't let the fear mongers make you miss the bull market. There's always going to be this dueling, views of it's doom and gloom or it's opportunity. And the reality is that there are both of those things at play. There are always incredible opportunities. You want to have the systems in place that you can access those. Now, to be sure, I'm going to talk about some of the recent events that are going on right now. So we look at, kind of the worst bond sell-off since 1787. You've probably seen these headlines. Bonds were supposed to be the safe haven. And then all of a sudden, people have been using these for their safety. Then it hasn't worked. Bonds are falling, crashing, values going down. This is not a new problem, though. And this is, if you look at this chart, you can pull up all this data. This is the 10-year returns of the fixed income markets, the bond markets. The bond market is basically negative for the last decade, for 10 years. Most people have no idea, and probably everyone over 50 who's investing in a 401k and things like target date funds. Target date funds have automatic allocations into bonds. And so people had probably 30, 40, 50% of their money over the last 10 years earning nothing. And they didn't even, no one ever really looks at the bond side because, it's the equities that get all the focus. But I would think if you showed people that, hey, did you know 30-40% of your money over the last 10 years did nothing, they'd probably be a little bit unhappy with that. And that's because, again, the industry is focused on one asset class, which is stocks and bonds. So this becomes a problem because, when you look at, where most people, where the markets are right now, and this is the September 30th chart where it was up 20, where the S&P was up 20, September 30th. I think now through today, it's down about 10%. So it's up 10% for the year. But when you look at this, you're like, oh, the big chart's up. If I'm just invested in the market, I buy my S&P 500 ETF, everything's going to be fine because this is a big uptrend. Well, what do we know that happened 2010, 12 for the last decade was the era of free money, right? Low interest rates. So it was free money, helps the markets drive up. And now you have baby boomers retiring. They're going to need to spend money. But more than that, if you actually zoom in a little closer, and this was brought to my attention by a client of mine back when she came into my office over 10 years ago, or actually, I guess it was about 10 years ago, she had added up everything she had put in her 401k for 15 years and found she hadn't earned a penny of interest. And you're going, how is that possible? Well, this is the zoom in portion of the chart we just looked at. We just looked at that big long chart and the big uptrend looks great. But this is actually the same chart, 1997 through 2013. And if you were investing diligently, dollar cost averaging, which means just saving every month into your 401k, you would average about 3.5% for that 15-year period. Now you take out fees, you added a little inflation, you pretty much went nowhere. So again, what do you see here? Are there opportunities to make money in the market? Yes. Are there opportunities to lose money in the market? Yes. You have to be able to capitalize on opportunities. But the problem is if you're getting down to retirement and you're trying to plan this out, like this is my retirement, you don't want to get stuck in where mainstream advice has people, which is the one thing retirement plan, where the market must go up. And to me, this is a crazy, crazy idea that you've worked your whole life, you have done everything you can to save, and now you're supposed to get to retirement and everything is going to be out of your control because we have no idea, what's going to happen with the bond market, the stock market. I was listening to some, I'm sure you guys do too, but I follow the best and most elite investment people in the country. Through my RIA, we have some of the best investment management teams in the country. When a black swan happens, an event nobody sees coming, no one sees it coming. And so you had all these people that were like, oh, I didn't see the treasury crash coming, the bond market, I didn't see that. Like, that's the problem with the markets. And so what happens is now you get baby boomers retiring. And it's, in this perpetual area of stress because this is the first generation ever that is trying to retire off the stock market. Okay. The 401ks were invented in the mid 80s. This is the first time that's now people are getting to retirement and we actually get to see if it works. Prior to that, everyone had, pensions. But what you're seeing already is that the data is showing that baby boomers are starting to outlive their savings. They're spending through it faster. Not only because of the market volatility, but cost and inflation and everything. And this is something I always try and highlight. Again, not anti-market. We use the market stuff all the time. But I want you to think about pensions. People used to have pensions. Why did companies get rid of pensions? You had the smartest, brightest, pension managers in the world managing billions of dollars, and they couldn't make it work. They could not create income for people, for their employees, for retirement using stocks and bonds, right? Because of the volatility and everything was happening. And that when you think about that, like, hey, the brightest, biggest pension fund managers in the country could not do it. They couldn't make it work. So what did they do? They created a 401k and they shifted all the burden to you. So now they expect you to do it. And so having sat down with people, mapping out income streams for 20 years, it is harder than just buying an S&P 500 index fund, right? It is harder than that. So that's why you want to start having, different strategies. And the reason it's so important, and this one chart kind of highlights it, what you see is two account values. One is you have the same amount of money. You start withdrawing in 1998. Money runs down pretty good all the way through 2022. You're still taking out money. You start those withdrawals 2 years later, just 2 years later, you start withdrawing, meaning you retired in 2000 instead of 98. Money runs out in 10 years. That's the difference of what's called sequence of returns risk. If you have a couple of bad years in the market, early in your retirement or right before you're retiring, the difference here between 2 years is 10 years of income. So that's why you don't want to get down to retirement and start having all of your money and income streams based on just the stock market. You want to have it so that no matter what's happening, monies can come in, right? And so when you start talking about, and the problem with this is when you start talking about other asset classes, and you hear a lot of blanket statements. And to me, when you hear blanket statements, those are red flags. What are blanket statements? All stocks are bad. All real estate's bad. All insurance products are bad. Like basically everyone who sells one thing says every other thing is bad. And that really makes it difficult for the consumer. There is not one strategy you can find that you can go out there and you're not going to be able to find a contrarian view of it on Google. And so most of the time, the guys that sell stocks only, they hate insurance products or annuities, or the guys that sell annuities, they hate stocks, or the guys that do real estate, they don't like this and that. The reality is there are good and bad products in every category. And you don't want to get stuck in an environment with just blanket statements, and working with, all things are bad or all things are good. I mean, check out this chart. This is a chart of JP Morgan's guide to alternative assets, non-correlated to the stock market. Now, what you see here on the top of the chart, 6 of the last 10 years, venture capital was the number one alternative asset. So you can see gains there of 26%, 28%, 57%, 2020, 48%, 19% annualized. So you see transportation fund, infrastructure, lots of different alternative assets out there. It doesn't mean that they're easy to use. It takes homework, it takes due diligence, it takes work. But there are a lot of other assets not related to the market that can actually be a good way to increase your wealth if you have the right systems in place. And I'm going to go into the systems here in just a second. But let's talk about business as an asset class. The blue line right here on this chart is business ownership. So as you can see, net worth starts low on the left, higher the net worth, getting to $1 billion on the left-hand side as you go down the chart. So the larger amount of blue means the more business ownership. What do you see? You see a pretty clear correlation between net worth, wealth, and business ownership. So shouldn't more financial advisors be out there talking about business ownership? And when someone comes in, which I do all the time, like, hey, we have some assets which we invest in. I start talking to them, wow, you have this skill set. Are you thinking about doing another business? Yeah, we're doing some consulting. We're thinking about it. We're not sure how to do it. Great. Let's set systems up so you can do that, because that's where you're going to make most of your money. It's not going to be in the index fund, that's going to go up and down. So you got to be able to have these different types of conversations with the teams that you're working with. And this is really the way I say it. What your team should be doing is researching the best opportunities in the market for you, helping you seize those golden opportunities, and setting up systems of protection. That's really the simple model right there. Research the opportunities, help seize those golden moments, find the cream of the crop, and then set up systems of protection. Because when it comes to the investment side, every investment firm in the country has basically the same stuff. You go to me, you go to anybody else, we're all going to have the same ETFs. We have the access to the same managers. We have access to the same funds. There's no real differentiation there. And it's still back to, we're talking about one asset class when there are actually lots of assets classes that you can potentially use. And the analogy I use is basically this, is it a butcher or a dietitian? So if you're out there and you just, left a job and you have an old 401k to roll, or something like that, and you go talk to the financial advisor, most of the time you're looking for holistic advice and you think you're talking to the dietitian, right? That's the plate of all the food and the fruits and the, and the meats and everything else. You think you're talking to someone who is looking at the big picture, has all these options to choose from, and now we're going to give you the perfect menu. Reality is most of the time you're talking to the butcher, because they usually have one product. This is what we sell. This is what we do. So everything's going to fit into this. And so that's a good thing to do, is know the difference between the two. Know who you're talking to. Do they have access to different asset classes? Which there are a lot of good ways to do it. I will tell you it's not easy, but I'm going to give you the structure and the systems that you want to use to be able to position your wealth to 5x. Remember, that was part of the mission today. What are the structures you can use to 5x wealth? We talked about tax elimination. Now we're going to go into the 5x side. So the first thing is separate assets into 2 categories. Offensive assets, higher risk, higher reward, no downside protection, typically going to be taxable. Defensive assets, present or future cash flow, a system to lock in profits, means takes profits off the table, or tax advantage or tax-free assets that don't move together. So when, of course, you think about higher risk, higher reward, remember the alternatives we looked at, venture capital, stocks, things like that, because you can make money in those things, but you have to be able to take the profits off the table. They're going to have higher risk, higher reward. And most people do this in opposite. They go offense first, right? This pyramid is flipped upside down. So they're taking more risk. Then they get upset when they lose. And that creates this cycle. And I'll kind of walk you through the cycle. But this is the all offensive cycle, because we've kind of been taught in the overall, mainstream financial, I would say, stuff, that all offense equals more wealth, right? So all offense equals more wealth. But what happens is we are not robots with our money. So you get all offensive, your market gets volatile, then you get stressed and you make bad decisions. And that process continues to loop, right? It's a reinforcing negative loop that hammers your wealth over time. Is that, making bad decisions and chasing rate of return. And so instead, what you do is you bring in other assets, you play offense, defense. I mean, there's not a sport you can find that you can't win without playing defense. Sometimes you score more on defense, but offense, defense, markets get volatile. Now you're thinking about opportunities, right? Because you have defensive set up. It's the old saying, never go to Vegas with scared money. If you're worried about losing, you're freaking going to lose. So when you have defense set up, you know that if everything else happens, doesn't matter. I'm financially unbreakable. I have money coming in no matter what happens in the world. That creates opportunity thinking. Now you're going to be able to capitalize on opportunities and you're going to increase wealth. And you have this reinforcing, increasing wealth loop. So those are the structures that you want to use when you're doing assets, and always kind of work on building that defensive framework first. So this way you're securing your future income. This way, no matter what happens, you'll have money coming in. It reduces fear when life is volatile because you know your bases are covered. And this financial stability, like I'm saying, raises your offensive radar. So there's a lot of ways to get offensive, and there's a lot of overlap between those categories, between offense and defense. So business income can be defensive, right? You have established businesses, they're bringing in income. You have rental real estate bringing in income. Same way you can be offensive with acquiring businesses, acquiring new real estate deals. It could be stocks, it could be crypto, it could be whatever it is. Whatever your area of expertise is often the area of best offense. And then you use other safer assets, preferably leverage, using other people's money to secure those defense. When you use other people's money in a safe way and safe assets, you have to use less capital to secure your defense, which will in turn more capital for offense. Again, we're creating these kind of reinforcing loops. So I'm going to get a quick drink. If you have questions, we'll kind of get through it. But you want to go from where most people are, which is this area right here where they're upside down. Stock market, one income, max taxes, does not feel safe. Flip this on its upside down where you can be. This is the process we call scaling wealth. You're reducing or eliminating taxes. You're building multiple assets and income streams. And so no matter what's happening in the world, you'll have money coming in. This is the process of building the modern family dynasty, taking wealth from 3 million to 5 million, 5 million to 10 million. And really at the end of the day, it's all about kind of doing what I call it's just control. It really is. Financial security is control. Controlling assets, controlling taxes, controlling income. That's what builds to financial security. And if you think about where you're at right now, how much control do you have? And when I talked, what a lot of people that I talk to right now, they don't have a huge amount of control. They don't feel any control. So it's moving into strategies that give you more control, which you can absolutely do. So I'll get into some case studies here in a minute. I know we're kind of coming up on time here pretty quickly. And so if you do have questions, you can type them in. And if you haven't already, again, just make sure you join the Wealth for Life group. These slides will be posted in there. It's a great forum of like-minded individuals. There's no sales in the group. It's just we really keep it, where we can share these good strategies and good ideas. So that's wealthforlifegroup.com. So go Buffalo Bills. Come on, man. All right. Thank you, Joseph. So now we're going to get into a few different case studies. And the first one we're going to get into is, the ability to create tax-free income stream using those multi-generational endowment strategies. And I know this is a big number, 10 million, but it is more common than you think when you do things in the right way. So this is a case study. Client was making about 1.4 million a year, age 50. So we're able to go in there, reduce taxable income by 50%. So I'm starting on the flow chart on the left, retain access to that capital. Funds never leave your possession. That creates a yearly tax saving of about $350,000 a year. Now we're going to take $150,000. That just goes into lifestyle because we want to be able to enjoy life, have fun, do things, and not always be stressed and worried about money. And so now 150,000 goes to lifestyle. We're in the middle of the flow chart now. 200,000 goes into our tax-free bucket. So that's building to 1 million tax-free over 5 years, but it's also getting matching. That's the 3-to-1 tax-free matching program. So now we've created a $4 million tax-free asset, and that will then kick off 280,000 a year in tax-free income. So 65 to 90, you do the distribution, 10 plus $1 million in distribution. That was really all generated by tax savings. So that strategy works for high income W-2, business sales, income spikes, big real estate sales. There's a lot of applications for that particular strategy, and it can work even at smaller scales as well. And in this particular example, this is a case study of turning 250K into 3 million tax-free. So this is, again, I would say one of the most accessible strategies that we do. I call it the lower hanging fruit of creating tax-free income. So age 48, current risks, worried about saving, taxes eating up wealth, right? Everybody's, market crashes, everybody's experiencing that. So the tax-free matching program matches all contributions 3-to-1. It's a tax protected asset, 0% floor. They're using call options to grow the money. It's extremely efficient and leaned out. So it's a very safe, secure asset. 50,000 goes in for 5 years. So this is the one that you're thinking no limit Roth. So now you have the 250 going in. You have the matching, roughly, depending on rates, 700,000. Now you've simply created a $950,000 tax-free asset. It kicks off 65,000 in tax-free income, 1.7 in distribution, so tax-free. And then we think about the tax savings every year on 65,000 in tax-free income, an extra 400,000 in tax savings. So the key to this is you're not taking on more risk to create more wealth. You're actually increasing your safety, and you're playing more defense to create more wealth. What's the defense? Well, tax-free money, right? So now you don't have to worry about tax increases and taxes eating out of your wealth. You're using other people's money in a safe asset. You're not on the hook for the matching. You're not on the hook for the other capital. It's collateralized, self-collateralized in the asset. So you're not taking on more risk. The strategy itself doesn't have market risk. You have guarantees. So again, you're increasing defense, reducing risk, and then freeing up more capital for other opportunities, the ability to continue to scale your wealth. Again, this is next level planning stuff. I know it's very foreign because most people don't see any of these types of strategies. This is another strategy. This one is $900,000 in income. Again, reducing it. This is California, obviously high tax environment, reducing AGI by 50%. So about 200,000 in yearly tax savings. Same thing applies. We're taking 100,000 out to lifestyle. You put 100 grand in the 3-to-1 matching, create a $2 million tax-free asset. Down the road on the right side there creates 180,000 in tax-free income. So you're getting millions of dollars of distribution generated from tax savings instead of trying to chase rate of return. That's a big difference, and it's actually more effective and more efficient to create wealth that way. And I know that a lot of times when people see these things, these case studies will be in the group. There's also some resource folders that when you join the group, you'll get access to. I try and pile all the strategy info into actually a Google Drive, a resource folder, so people can just access it, and then we continually update it with new strategy information. So you can read that. This is a C Corp strategy. So the C Corp is loaning 200,000 a year to partners. So again, instead of partners taking income that would be taxable, the C Corp is loaning money to those individuals. So it's not taxed as income. There's some basic loan documentations called loan-based split dollar compensation that's done to make everything above board, follows the IRS rules to the letter. So now you have this money that's going in, you're not taxed on it. It's going to be paid off at death through an insurance policy or through loan forgiveness. And then we use the same thing. We use that 3-to-1 matching to all of a sudden, boom, supercharge a large tax-free asset. In this case, we've got I think it was a $3.7 million tax-free asset. That's going to kick off 364,000 in tax-free income. Yearly tax savings, 127,000 a year. Again, next level planning. Most people don't see it. The first thing when people see it, they think, oh my God, it's too good to be true. But this is what the wealthy do. And you can go out and you can ask any big law firm or any big tax attorney firm, and you think about what do people that have $100 million in wealth do? Are they aggressive in what they do in taxes? Yes, they absolutely are. But the nice thing is most people assume being aggressive is taking risks. You don't. There's plenty of rules in the tax code that are safe, established, easy to do. I mean, these strategies like these, the ones I'm talking about, if you're getting the household income over 200K, you can access a lot of these strategies. And sometimes you can even get as low as maybe 150K in income, but you can really take advantage of these types of strategies. And again, you think about the impact that it's able to make and what you're able to do. It can have a pretty big income, using safer type assets. And this is an asset. This was a client statement recently. Again, tax-free asset, no market risk, easy to structure. You get 7, 8, 9, 10%. The point of all of just showing different assets is know that there's other things out there. So you don't have to be captive to one particular asset. I'm not making any kind of blanket statements on what products are good or what products are bad. Just know that there's a lot of different assets and a lot of different strategies out there that you can certainly take advantage of. So I know we're coming up on time, almost just a few minutes left. But if you haven't had time yet, join the group, the Wealth for Life group. See if you can get to the point where, again, I would focus on this right here, seeing if you can get more control over and have more financial security. If you have money and you're not feeling in control right now, it's probably because you have, taxes siphoning off money, or you're watching your asset values fluctuate, or you don't have control of the income streams for the future. All of those things are stuff that you can do to give yourself more control. So again, I will post all of this stuff in the Wealth for Life group. So you just go to wealthforlifegroup.com. And if you have any questions right now, feel free to type them in. And otherwise, I'm going to have another drink of my morning beverage. And I know we covered a lot of information today. Thank you, Branko. I appreciate the comment. I'm looking forward to chatting with you again. I think we have something on the calendar next week or so. All right. So if you have questions, my chat on Restream gets a little funky, so I can't always see the chat. So the slides and the recordings, I'll have those up later today. So those will actually be in the Wealth for Life group. Yep, you'll be able to access those. And let's see, any more questions coming through? My chat is not kind of working at the moment. So let's see here. Okay, very good. That looks good to me. I appreciate everyone attending today. I know we covered a lot of information. So if you have any questions, let me pop my email up here, get through some of the case studies. Wealthforlifegroup.com. Oh, I must have forgot that slide. So you can email me. I will type that in the chat if you have any questions, or just actually easier at this point, just DM me on LinkedIn and I'll get it from there. I appreciate it, Chris. I'm glad you could make it today. Thank you, Sydney. Oh, Sydney has a question. Go ahead. And I'll see if I can get my email in the chat there for everyone. Yes, I would say, Tommy, you kind of have a question there. If there are taxes on short-term rentals, so one of those would be looking at the bonus depreciation. If you haven't already looked at that, now you got to meet the qualified real estate professional test. But if you do earn, if you're doing that, maybe actively managing it, I would certainly look at the QRP. If you're in a lower income bracket, what are other forms of income we can think about? I don't think there's ever been a better time to start a side business or a side hustle. And I don't necessarily, it could be a digital business, of course, but I think those are more highly competitive. So I think that what you always want to look at is look at your skill set. And if you actually were to draw that out and kind of look at that on a spectrum, the higher, your skill set, the higher your ROI. So the more passive you get into investing, if you have a low skill set, you're trying to be passive, then those are where you're going to get lower returns. So if you are looking for what you can do, look at what skill sets you have. And then I think, LinkedIn is a great avenue to reach out and, if you're going to do consulting or you're going to get side businesses, or, there's a lot of, small businesses that you can start and use your networking to do it. And I think that's kind of the easiest low hanging fruit when you're kind of trying to start those high side hustles, is to network, because you're going to find opportunities there that come through that. Oh, you're welcome, Tommy. Yep, anytime. And I was trying to get to the point, I'm just going to pop my email in there, but you can certainly DM me on LinkedIn. And let me get back to that slide here real quick. I'll see if I can find that. That's okay. It's denver@wealthforlife.net. So you can email me. We talked about being for the group, or just DM me on LinkedIn, and that should do it. All right, everyone. It is 11 o'clock. So that was our 1 hour event. Thanks everyone for joining it. And if you had some questions and you didn't get to ask, just reach out again. And I appreciate everyone joining me. My name's Denver Noahs. Thanks a lot, everyone, for joining, and have a great week.